Shumann.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Susan? No?
Oh, yes, I can jump in right here. Hi, my name is Susan Marcario, and I'm the Executive Director of Family Link. I wanted to welcome everyone as well and introduce you to our speaker tonight, Nancy Shumann. Nancy is a speech and language pathologist and listening and spoken language specialist working for Summit Speech School in Summit, New Jersey. She wears many hats, including managing the early intervention program, supervising the parent-infant staff, and the targeted evaluation team, which provides initial evaluations for children with hearing loss. Nancy also runs the group family training program for parents of children with hearing loss ages birth to 3. She holds parent support meetings and teaches families about issues related to hearing loss, as well as the transition process from early intervention to preschool. Nancy's a member of the Children's Hearing Institute Medical and Education Board. She served on the New Jersey Legislative Work Group in Deaf Education and is a stakeholder for the New Jersey EDI program and an important member of the Language Acquisition Work Group. We are pleased to have her here tonight to speak about hearing loss and the family journey. Please join me in welcoming Nancy Shumann.
Thank you so much, Susan and Karen. And now I'm going to have to really pace myself because I am a fast talker, and you guys both did such a great job of being measured in your speech. And that will last for about 4 seconds, and then I'll be back to talking like Minnie Mouse. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint just so that helps me kind of guide the conversation and I remember what I'm talking about. And then if you have any questions, if you put them in the chat, then Karen will post them. So then I don't lose track of where I am by trying to check the chat too. All right. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So here we are. And I probably should have put my contact information in there. So I will make sure that goes in at the end. So we're going to talk today, or I'm going to talk, and you guys are going to ask questions about hearing loss, which we consider a family journey that has a lot to do with relationships and daily routines. And there's some good news about that. So first, I'm going to tell you that I work for Summit Speech School for about the past 7 years. I've had a relationship with them for over 20 years. And our website has a lot of great information in there, resources about all things having to do with hearing loss, not just about the school. But the school was formed in 1967 as a way for families who were dealing with the effects of the rubella epidemic in the 60s. So what happened was they built this program where parents wanted their children to learn how to listen and speak. And it started with 1 or 2 kids. And now we have our early intervention program, which sees 50 to 60 kids a month and 100 kids over the course of the year. We have a preschool program that serves about 25 kids. And then our biggest program is for our children who are just out in the mainstream. And we have 18 teachers of the deaf who go to 65 school districts in New Jersey to see over 100 kids, because there are a lot of children in New Jersey with hearing loss. And we have found that when educators and providers are well trained, what they can do is support other educators, and children can be educated in the mainstream setting. So that's our goal. And it starts with our early intervention program. So we call this a journey, and in hearing loss, the journey starts with identification. So what we mean is that we want all children to have universal hearing screening before they leave the hospital when they're born. If they're born at home, we want them to have the hearing screening before the first month of life. And we have seen such a huge change as all 50 states have elected to do this newborn screening in children getting identified, amplified, and into early intervention. And we're seeing that by having all of that happen when children are young, how they are able to handle their academics and the social life of being in elementary school and going on into the community has been improved because we started early. So this journey, identification, amplification, and intervention, and that's the road to success, just getting things started. So hearing loss is a pretty big deal. And what I know is that 95% of the children who are born with significant hearing loss are born in families where there's no hearing loss. So most people are a little bit stunned when they hear that their child has a hearing loss. Now, there are some kinds of hearing loss that run in families, and there are syndromes and disorders that may have been picked up before the baby was born. But by and large, parents are caught off guard when their child is identified with a hearing loss. And so learning that your child is deaf or hard of hearing can bring on a lot of different emotions at different times. We understand and support your need to think through your unique family situation, and we are here to help you make informed choices for your family. And so when we work with babies in early intervention, we really want to support families in all that they're trying to deal with as they learn about hearing loss. And sometimes parents have shared that they feel like it's a crash course in anatomy and acoustics and technology, and they were really planning to go home and sing some lullabies and change some diapers. So the identification of the hearing loss has kind of shifted their focus, and they have to be on top of things in a way that's different than what they were expecting. So one of the things that's good in New Jersey is that we have hearing consultants. So when a parent has a child with a hearing loss or has concern about any disability, and they call early intervention, they will relay information and get the process started of having their child evaluated and learning about resources and services through early intervention if the child is eligible. When a child has a diagnosed hearing loss, they are presumptively eligible for early intervention. Still go through the evaluation process because on an annual basis, we need benchmarks to show that the services in place for that child through early intervention were having an impact. So even without the testing, a child with a diagnosed hearing loss is eligible for early intervention, and we still do the testing so that we can see what progress is like. When a family contacts early intervention and there is a hearing loss, that family is entitled to the services of our hearing consultants. So Family Link has a grant, and we now have 3 experts in hearing loss who provide services all over the state. So one is in the north, one is in the central Jersey, and one is in the south. And a family is able to reach out or be contacted by these hearing consultants who will answer any questions. These ladies, and I know them, Barbara Hayes is in North Jersey and Yvonne Collins is in Central Jersey, or I did it backwards. Lorraine Salamini is in Central Jersey and Yvonne Collins is in South Jersey. These people are experts in the field and they have so much information, and they can patiently explain to parents some of the things that are going to be coming up next on this journey with hearing loss. They have lots of resources, and it is just a first person extending a hand to say, let me help you figure out what's going to work for you and your family with regards to your child in hearing loss and early intervention. So I highly recommend that people make use of the hearing consultants and their free services. And then there are a lot of other resources that are just good to have. So I'm going to share some with you now. Let's hope this works. Okay, so this is the Department of Health website, and there's just great information in there. And what's really nice to know is that there are many of our resources are in multiple languages. And it talks about early identification and intervention. And then it gets down to the bottom here. And this is a 20-minute video. And what you will do is see real people with hearing loss communicating. So I'm a speech therapist by training, and I got into this kind of work because I have a commitment to having people become effective communicators. And then my path migrated to now I work exclusively with children and families that are dealing with hearing loss. So in this video, you get to see adults of different ages who have used different methods of becoming effective communicators. And I think it's a good thing for families to look at so you kind of get a sense of what those choices might be. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I don't know how to manage my screens unless I do that. So just be patient. For a second. And go. So here we are, back to my cue kids. The other links will take you to learning more about hearing loss from the CDC. There's a wonderful organization called Hands and Voices, which is a parent-led organization for families who are dealing with hearing loss, regardless of modality. And what they are is a repository for great information. So there are articles on anything you're interested in: newborn screening, unilateral hearing loss, what's a BAHA, how do you get a cochlear implant, what do I use a DM system for, how do I explain hearing loss to my child's nursery school teacher. And this one, choosing communication approaches, kinds of explains how when we're looking at ways of communicating when people have a hearing loss, we look at from everything, understanding life and processing language through auditory only, to auditory with some visual, to visual with some auditory, to only visual. And that takes you through what you would probably know as auditory oral, auditory verbal, cued speech, total communication, ASL, and bye-bye. So if you have any questions about those things, they're explained really well in that communication options website there from babyhearing.org.
And just to add, I am putting the links in the chat for anyone that would like to explore that.
Thank you, Karen. So because of the topic, I think it's good to know that family well-being, healthy babies, mental health, and connections, those are priorities for everybody who works in early intervention. And New Jersey Early Intervention has a strong commitment to supporting babies and toddlers and families. And we know, because New Jersey is such a little, densely populated and very diverse state, that support can look very different. So when I'm thinking about early intervention and I'm thinking about meeting the needs of families who have children with hearing loss, I want to know who supports the children, who supports the parents and caregivers, who supports the practitioners, and how does this all happen? So what I'd like you to keep in mind that there is help and support. There's a lot of advice, and there are a lot of people willing to give care. And sometimes how you're supported and when you're supported may change. So we know that relationships are key to social and emotional development and well-being. So in early intervention, over the past several years, there have been trainings available to practitioners. So those of us at Summit Speech School participated in the Pee-wee training, Parents Interacting with Infants. So this is a whole model that's relationship built in terms of service delivery, so that you're not only combining what your goals are with the outcomes are that are important to that family in terms of the child becoming an effective communicator or meeting their milestones in cognition or gross motor or fine motor or self-help, but that you want to see that your practitioners are in relationship with the parents so that parents can be in relationship with the child. In early intervention in 2023, we're not looking to have practitioners come in and wave a magic wand and help children make progress. We're looking at supporting families so that the family is doing what they can do best to support their child in making progress, however that's defined by that family. Another training we did is keeping babies and children in mind. And this one was very interesting for us because it really promoted an awareness about the unique social and emotional development of our youngest children. Now, if you're a teacher of the deaf or a speech therapist who works with children who have hearing loss, we have hierarchies that are practically tattooed on our bodies about how language develops and how audition develops. We're all about the developmental sequence of things. But when we were in this, keeping babies and children in mind, we were really looking at what's the emotional development of our babies and toddlers, and how can we be reflective and really incorporate thinking and feeling into what we're doing when we're working towards goals and objectives that are really specifically related to other milestones. And we found out that it wasn't as hard as we thought it was going to be. It caused us to kind of pause with what we were doing and ask ourselves those questions. How are we supporting the child? How are we supporting the family? How are we supporting the caregiver? What are we doing to support ourselves as caregivers and practitioners? So both of these programs being available to people in early intervention, I think has really made inroads into shaping the way in which services are delivered to families. So what does all of this have to do with hearing loss? So in New Jersey early intervention, every practitioner should be looking at your child and your family with a view to build relationships and provide support. So as a parent, you need to feel comfortable communicating with whoever your practitioner is or your service coordinator, those people, so that they're aware of your needs and your challenges and your successes, and that relationship will build on itself over time. But when you feel supported, that allows you to support your child. And you do that through observation, information, and communication. It's absolutely critical that parents gather information and share it with practitioners, and practitioners gather information, make observations, and share it with parents. How you do it, how often you do it, how much you do at any given time is really according to what the family needs and what the practitioner can do. So it's not a one size fits all. Supporting the parent-child relationship is ongoing. This will happen over and over and over as your child receives services in early intervention. And when your child has a hearing loss, there is a lot to know. And how you feel is also important. So while I would be absolutely thrilled if somebody can pick up an audiogram and describe their child's hearing loss and how the technology works, I know that that family will be better supported if, along with that information that the parents can share, they can also tell me how they're feeling about hearing loss, or what their frustration is about ear molds that don't fit, or how difficult it is to find parking to go to the audiologist, or how wonderful it is when your child turns because they heard the cat purr for the first time. All of that is worth sharing. So hearing loss involves a lot of relationships beyond the family. So I'm sure if I could see you, I'm sure you could raise your hand and say, yes, I know doctors, nurses, ENTs, otolaryngologists. I have audiologists, speech pathologists, teachers of the deaf, hearing aid dispensers, cochlear implant representative, child care staff, school personnel, and community contacts. And then there are other parents. So if you're vision of having a child and becoming a parent was that you're going to bring your baby home, change their diapers, sing some songs, and have this bubble of intimacy and connectedness with your baby, you might view all of this as an intrusion into your plan. And I get it. It's a lot to deal with. So having a practitioner who will support you in saying, yeah, it's got to be tough to have to keep all those appointments. Maybe, but why don't you talk out loud about what you have planned and we can see if there's a way we can streamline that or we can do something remotely, that kind of thing. And what parents say most often is that there are so many decisions to make and there are so many appointments. And we can get caught up in the logistics of managing the hearing loss. And I'd like to remind you that the most important thing is the relationship, the connections, the needs of your baby, and the needs of your family. So it may be that you have a great idea and you're gung ho with doing this, and getting there. And then you look and you realize that I've been traipsing around with my poor baby in a car seat going to all of these places. And that baby has had no time with grandparents or siblings because I've been attending to these needs and these appointments. So, working with a practitioner who will take time to say, how's that going for you? What's the baby need now? What are the needs of your family? What supports can you put in place? Is there somebody who can go with you to these appointments so that maybe you can be on the elevator while they're parking the car and they can show up and maybe handle a diaper while you're trying to figure out how to get an ear mold made? So I think that information follows with opinions, and then there are decisions, and then you're forced to take some action. And in between, you can pause and allow yourself as a parent to be supported and as a practitioner to say, what's going on here? What are the challenges? What are the successes? Let's revisit those. So the good news is that learning language can happen in very natural interactions. So I was thinking about this, and this makes sense. Like those of us with typical hearing, we learn language. My mother did not sit down with flashcards. Probably your mother didn't either. You learned language by listening to people talk and play and sing and play games. And so I started to think about if that really made sense to parents when their kids can't hear to begin with or don't hear well to begin with. And I thought about those of us who have tried to learn a second language. And I remember sitting with my Spanish tutor through high school and college and two Berlitz classes. I was so committed to learning how to speak Spanish. And then I went to Venezuela and I realized that I had a million words and couldn't speak the language. But I like to cook. And the house in which I lived had a lady who liked to cook. And I learned my Spanish in the kitchen with Maria because I knew how to cook. She knew how to cook. And I was like a sponge for all of those words that had meaning to me. And I have a friend who wanted to learn Polish, and he was an avid car person, mechanic, was his hobby kind of thing. So when a neighbor who's fluent in Spanish, fluent in Polish, was also a car enthusiast, they spoke Polish while changing the oil and washing the car. So in a context where there's interest, you can learn a language. And so that's what I'm saying. The good news is for your child to learn language, you can do it in the context of your everyday routines. And those everyday routines are how you build a relationship with your child, whether they have a hearing loss or not. So here you have, after all of those appointments, if you need it, this is permission to play with your baby, to sing with them, to bathe with them, to feed them, and know that all of those activities of your daily living are really contributing to them learning language based on them having been early identified and having amplification so they have access to sound. And then it's your voice. It's the most effective tool in an arsenal to learn language is somebody's voice. Okay, so some things to remember when communicating with your baby. Now, this was put out for children with hearing loss. So if any of you have children without hearing loss, you tell me if any one of these isn't a good idea for a kid without hearing loss. Because I think this is just good things to do with kiddos. They happen to be really important if your child has a hearing loss and limited access to sound. Hold your baby close so he or she can focus on your face, and also so that your voice is close to their technology. When you are no more than 6 inches away from the speaker on their hearing aid, on their Baha or their cochlear implant, you can be assured that your voice is getting where it needs to be. Then your child will have access to your voice. So close is good. Position your baby so you are often within sight. It's good for babies to figure out where the sound comes from. And when they're little, the sound is coming from mommy and daddy's mouths. So make sure they can see you. This is kind of critical. Try to minimize background noise so that your child can use the hearing he or she has to the best of his or her ability. So that means if you want your baby to learn their name and you're going to call Sarah, Sarah, she will respond to Sarah if she can hear it. But if the TV is on or the music is playing or you're wondering if she can hear her name while she's sitting in the high chair and you're using the electric mixer, know that that's not really effective. If you can minimize background noise, then your child can hear what's important. So the thing is that with those of us with typical hearing and who are adults, we can separate foreground and background information and noise. Like right now, I can hear myself talking, and if you were asking questions, I can hear you. And I'm not paying attention to the people who are walking their dogs outside and the little barking that I hear going on because I can separate foreground and background. When you have a hearing loss and you're listening through microphones that are picking up sound, when you're an infant, when you're a young child, you don't have the capacity for separating out what's important from what's just random noise or what's less important. So when you make it quiet, not all the time, but when you really want to get your point across or when you want to know what your child is listening to, you have to get rid of the extra noise. Use good lighting so they don't have to squint. Make eye contact often. That facilitates not only your child feeling connected, but them being mindful of how you use your face. I always say in New Jersey, there's a whole other language about sarcasm that children need to understand. So, in addition to understanding vocabulary, they have to be able to read facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, so they understand not only what was said, but what was meant. And you get into a routine of having that available to your child if you make sure you're making eye contact often. When your kids are little, you're going to imitate movements and the sounds that they make, and you're going to wait and see if they'll repeat them. And I think we've all had that experience. I just got a video this over Mother's Day with my niece with her new baby, and she's saying, "Ma, ma, 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 ma." And he looks at her with a big smile and he says, "Da, da, 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 da." And she says, "Ma, ma, ma." And he says, "Da, da, da." So sometimes it goes like that. But regardless of what they're saying to each other, that back and forth, that reciprocity fuels relationship and it fuels the beginning of language, of being a listener and being a speaker. Work on communicating with your child during activities that you both enjoy. Like I would not have learned Spanish well if I was doing it while balancing my checkbook or doing accounting because I don't really like numbers. But I learned Spanish really well while driving in a car and traveling and cooking because those are things I like. So I just took that and I think about dealing with the children that I've worked with over the years. And if Play-Doh is your passion, we can learn language through Play-Doh. If water play is your passion, let's do that. I've spent hours playing in farms. I don't really like animals, but we can learn language with farm animals or dinosaurs or little people, whatever it is that sparks interest in the child. You, as the adult, as the parent or the practitioner, can just bring language to that activity. And that creates a context where it's meaningful to pay attention. Take time to communicate with your child many times throughout the day. It is never a good idea to think, oh my gosh, I need 45 minutes to teach my kid how to talk today. Doesn't work that way. So take your intention of having your child learn how to listen and speak and bring it to all of your daily routines. And then make sure that you give yourself some quiet time. Quiet's hard for me, if you hadn't noticed. But when you're talking to a child, if you remember to pause, that allows them to process and then to go from noticing silence to, oh, Henry, oh, where if I was saying, Henry, it's a rainy day. Did you see all that? Look, it's raining really hard. I think it's a little windy. Oh, the leaves are coming down because it's raining. Henry, did you see that? Henry, look at the window. Where if I'm silent for a while, I can say, Henry, oh, Henry, look, I think it's raining. I hear the drops. Do you hear the drops? So when you shift like that and allow silence to be a bookend for what's important, you allow the child to be engaged and to have time to process. And most importantly, enjoy the time you and your child spend together. So find things that you like to do and bring language to those activities. Excuse me, I'm going to take you through this really quickly. There's this hearingfirst.org is a wonderful website with so many great articles, resources, videos. I suggest you spend some time bouncing around in that. To make the point about not taking 45 minutes to teach your kid to talk, but rather taking your strategies and techniques to wherever your child is and making and creating a context that's going to be meaningful. The people at Hearing First decided that we could give them these things some fancy names, and these are 12 strategies and techniques. So all of this is in a link that Karen's going to put up so you can take a look at it. But it kind of makes sense. So one of the things is to be a director. Imagine you're a film director and your child is learning how to listen and maybe hearing new things with new technology. So you have to be a director and you actually have to direct them as to what to listen to because the brain doesn't know what to do with sound unless the brain has experienced sound. So when they're a new listener, you have to point things out to them. You have to say, oh, Sarah, listen. Listen, you have to get their attention. And over time, they will have access to that information. It'll become meaningful when you act like a bird dog and you name what it is. You listen, you heard knock, knock, knock. Somebody's at the door. Or ding, I hear the microwave. Oh, I think your bottle's warm enough now. I heard that ding. Let's go check. Hear it before they see it. I think most of us like reading to our babies. And what's really interesting is to talk a little bit about what they're going to see so they have the opportunity to process a picture in their brain before you show them the picture. So if you're going to read a biscuit book, you can say, oh, ready for the book. Let's see. I think we're going to see Biscuit. And Biscuit has a friend. Maybe we will see a duck. Let's look. And then you show them the page and there's Biscuit. So when you say Biscuit the next time, you can see their little brain is like, yeah, I knew that was coming. I heard her say Biscuit. And then when you turn the page and there's a duck and you say, there's the duck, quack, 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 their brain was ready to hear that information. Make listening easier goes back to eliminate or reduce background noise. If it's really important for you, if you have a 2.5-year-old and you're going to go visit some family and you're in a car ride and you want to make sure that they know that they're going to Aunt Claire and Uncle Pete's house and you want them to hear that, you don't tell them about Aunt Claire and Uncle Pete while you have music playing in the car. You turn that off. Turn down the air conditioning, you get it as quiet as it can be, and then you can be assured that they actually have access to what it is you're saying. So some of it is just managing the environment. Play by play means act. This is what I did with my husband who had no experience with children before our daughter showed up. I said, just pretend that you're narrating whatever it is that's going on. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to him, so this was how I convinced him. Years ago, I went to the US Open. I had a date who was into tennis. I don't know anything about tennis. And I thought this is going to be pretty awkward because they have no idea what's going on. So he brought, this was a long time ago, a transistor radio with headphone, with little earbuds, whatever we called them then. So while I was watching the tennis, I was listening to people, the sports announcers, talk about what was going on. And it made it so much more interesting because it wasn't just things flying back and forth. They were talking about the kinds of serves and the kinds of court and who was doing this and how fast it was going. So when I explained that to my husband, he's like, oh, okay. So when I'm giving her a bath, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to turn the water on. Oh, I can hear it. It's swishing. Oh, the tub is almost full. Let me get the bubbles. I'm going to squeeze it. You're just narrating what's going on. Because while your child is taking in all that's going on, the sights and sounds and the smells of a bath, they're hearing an adult's voice talk about what's going to happen. We're making sure that you're giving a child a turn. A listening sandwich is when you have a brand new word and you say, oh my goodness, we're going to the aquarium and we're going to see an octopus. An octopus. You believe it? We're going to see an octopus. And then you show them the picture of the octopus. Yeah, we're going to see an octopus. It looks just like that. And later you're going to say, boy, I'm excited about seeing that octopus. So you have an auditory sandwich where they heard it, they saw it, they heard it again. So that if you don't have a picture and you're walking down the hallway in the Camden Aquarium and you say, next we're going to see the octopus, you're like, okay, I have an idea what that is. Keep them on their toes is a way to set up sabotage. So you do things that are a little bit unexpected. So they have to kind of take action, like setting out 3 socks but only 2 shoes or only 1 shoe, or leaving 1 mitten when they're getting dressed, or giving them a bowl of soup with no spoon. So they kind of have an expectation for things to be a certain way, and you mess it up a little bit so you can see how they're thinking and if they'll say, um, I need something or this isn't right. Beyond the here and now is when you're talking about things that could happen later or what will happen, or general, this is what's going to, or this is what used to happen. So you're creating context of activities when you're traveling or you're going places, whether you're picking pumpkins. It's all about me. When you're reading a book, if you can say, oh, look, I think the example they give is like brown bear, brown bear. When you say, well, brown bear, what do you see? And then you say, Mary Beth, what do you see? And you use your child's name and they kind of then have a relationship with the story. It builds an interest. Help me, but don't tell me everything. So if you're looking at a book and you say, you're not going to believe what's on the next page. And the kiddo's looking and you say, it's green and it's long and it's wiggly and it might turn into a butterfly. Well, if they've been doing the hungry caterpillar for a week, like most nursery schools do, you being able to give them pieces of information leads them down the path of taking in that information and arriving at, that's a description for a caterpillar. Now, that isn't happening when they're 6 months old and they just have new equipment. But you're getting into a routine of doing that means that all of your interactions with your child are providing the opportunity for them to learn language. And what do you hear can be moving on from environmental noises to who was talking, what did they say, what does it mean? So the details are in there so you can take a look at all of that. So I included some routines with babies. So all of those strategies can be used with your infants. So you may be doing acting like a director or being a bird dog with your baby while you're changing their diapers, or during play routines when you're singing or you're building up, knock it over, crash, I heard that. Or social routines, up, here comes daddy, he's going to sing a song. Or around the town when you're driving and You hear a siren. Oh, I hear that. I hear that. And the fire truck comes by. Truthfully, I've never had that. I've driven a lot of miles and I've never had that happen when I had a kid who needed to hear a siren. So it would make sense to them, but they live in hope. Then there are also routines with toddlers. So this little cutie is out there playing with bubbles. So bubbles are just plain fun. And she could be out there playing with bubbles and giggling and make her mom's heart happy and make her dad thrilled that she's giggling up a storm. What they're also doing is saying, pop, pop, pop. Can you reach for it? Jump for that one. And they're using all sorts of verbs and action words while she's playing, and then they're talking about it later. It was so much fun. I heard you laugh. I was so happy to be outside. So those social and play routines, just like bathing and eating, give you an opportunity to teach your kiddo language. So when they're little, you're doing body parts while you're washing them. When they're older, it may be you're putting lotion on them in the wintertime and sunscreen on them during the day, and you've gone beyond nose and arms and legs to, I'm going to put some on your chin, I'm going to put some on your shoulders, and then you're saying head, shoulders, knees, and toes, just because it's fun. And your child has not only taken in new information, it's been in a context that's interesting for them, and they see that talking is a fun thing that they do in their family. Listening is a fun thing that they do in their family. So there's some really interesting literature that's out there about how we have children grow big vocabularies. It has nothing to do with hearing loss, but you can apply it to hearing loss. So there was a lot of research done about how many millions of words typical hearing children in middle and upper class homes hear compared to children who live in poverty. And there's a lot to be said for when children have more access to people who are talking, they build bigger vocabularies, and that's a foundation for literacy. So now more research has gone on, and there's an article here called Inside Early Talk. And what they found that is even more predictive of academic success and language age that's equal to their chronological age is how many conversational turns the child experiences each hour, whether it's in school or when they're at home. So that give and take, that back and forth, the commenting, the ma, da, 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 oh, peekaboo, and the baby does something or says something. All of that lays the foundation for kids to learn about language and be exposed to vocabulary, which is going to be part of the building blocks for them to be literate, for them to learn to read and to write, which is really helpful to go on for later learning and success. So this is a good article. There's another one here, More Than Baby Talk, those 12 strategies that I kind of ran by. This is another article that kind of names things a little bit differently, but they're just kind of things to keep in the back of your mind when you're playing with your baby to say, am I narrating this? Oof, it's a little bit too noisy in here. Let me make this quality time. I'm going to make eye contact. I'm going to be close to my baby. I'm going to make sure she can hear what I'm saying. I'm going to make this be fun. And if I hit a wall, I'm going to use my practitioners to show me another way to do it or how to work through the challenge that's coming my way. The last link here, if you go to the summits, it's summitspeech.org is our website, and I compiled quite a while ago and then updated. These are just resources, and the whole list is done again in Spanish. These are just places to go to get information from the American Speech and Hearing Association to the CDC to Eddie to Hands and Voices, Hearing First, My Baby's Hearing. These are just great places. In New Jersey, we have information on the right to special education in New Jersey, and all of you are entitled to the New Jersey Parent Resource Guide for children who are deaf or hard of hearing. There's also a New Jersey Deaf Student Bill of Rights, which covers a lot of information for, how did I get out of that? I'm sorry. A lot of information for what your child, um, what you can advocate for your child to have to make sure that their educational programming, their placement, their services are all in keeping with what your child needs. So, the parent resource and the New Jersey Bill of Rights, the New Jersey Deaf Student Bill of Rights are just really good things for you to take a look at. So, those of us who use listening and spoken language, that is the philosophy that drives what we do, follow 10 principles of auditory verbal therapy. And you don't have to read over these right now, but I want you to see that of these 10 principles in the middle, it's guide and coach parents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So then more than half of what we're aiming to do is to guide and coach parents, whether it's to manage their equipment, to get good audiological information, to create supportive environments, to learn how to integrate listening and spoken language, to use developmental milestones. So this is not something that anybody expects to happen in a vacuum, that there are ways to be connected. These are the resources that were in there before. I put them in again. That in your routines, whether it's a child dressing or eating or playing, all of those are situations in which you can add language, create a context, and give your child the opportunity to build their listening skills, which become portable. And then what they learn to listen to in a quiet home environment while they're playing allows them to have a foundation so that they can listen when they're in a school setting with a little bit more noise and maybe not the most interesting topic. They've learned how to listen. So my message is the big journeys start with small steps. And it was really helpful to remember that your child is a child first. Their hearing loss is something interesting to talk about, something to be dealt with, but we never lose sight, whether you're a parent or a practitioner, that your child is a child first. Your relationship is paramount. So sometimes what you have to do logistically to manage the hearing loss, you have to juggle with how are you going to maintain a relationship for your parent with your child and with your family. Hearing loss is just one piece to consider. And truthfully, I think it's a really, really important piece. And if I had lots more time, I could tell you lots more stuff because it really is huge and important. However, it's one piece. Remember that you're not alone. There are a lot of resources out there. There are parents that will help. There are practitioners that will help. There are audiologists, speech therapists, teachers of the deaf, people who work for manufacturers, just people who have dealt with hearing loss, who are willing to extend a helping hand and say, I've survived the journey. Let me help you along the way because somebody helped me. Keep in mind that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint, so conserve your energy. Your child is going to be learning language for the rest of their lives. All of these things that you learn are incorporated on a daily basis, so it's not like, let me find 45 minutes to get my flashcards. It's how can I make these good and effective strategies be part of what I do during the day so that my baby and I are enjoying each other and we're learning and growing. So that's what I have. And I'll take questions. Are there any in the chat, Karen?
Mm.
Excuse me.
No, there were not any questions in the chat. I just dropped all the links for the resources you provided, and I will be also be emailing all those links to everyone that registered and everyone that's here. So far, no question. Feel free to type it if you don't.
I had a question, if I may.
Yes.
Hi, I have a son who's in early intervention and has severe bilateral conductive hearing loss that's a byproduct of a very rare syndrome. And I was just wondering where you see ASL fitting in with listening and spoken language therapy, because we're working on teaching him ASL.
Sorry, I muted, so I was coughing. So now this would be better unmuted. There are a lot of communication options that are open to the family. I think the hearing consultant is a great person to give you a lot of information, and you have to factor in what's going to work for your family. Some of the things that I suggest for developing language are really applicable whether a child is using listening or spoken language or using ASL, like stay close to your child, make sure you're within eyesight. Make a lot of eye contact, do things that are fun together, find meaningful ways, and then build the language into that. The issue is if you want listening and spoken language outcomes, there are additional things that you need to do about building those auditory skills. If you're making a choice for ASL, and with ASL, generally that means that you're going to be using voice off, then you need to be looking at how do you visually present that so you get the most bang for your buck.
Okay,
Does that
cool.
make sense?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
you.
So a lot of things, like pick the things that are going to be good for you and your baby, and that's where you put your energy. Create a context that's going to be meaningful and have them get language.
There was a question, I couldn't see it, but it says, what happened if you talk to them in a daily routine and they still have a speech delay? And they still have a speech delay?
Well, everybody's going to develop at their own rate, and sometimes there are considerations in there. So it doesn't mean when you look at children, I'm a speech therapist. So when I look at children with typical hearing, there's a real range for when speech develops, when they get their first words, when they're combining two words, when they're producing these sounds clearly, when they're combining words into sentences, when they're using different parts of speech, pronouns and past tense verbs and adjectives and all of that. So there's a developmental sequence with a lot of sway as to what's within the range of normal. So when you're using really good strategies, the other thing you have to do is be patient. And you have to look to see if you're looking for listening and spoken language outcomes and you're using these strategies and you're not the only one that's using these strategies, you have to go back and look, is the hearing technology meeting the child's needs? Do they actually have access to the sounds and in the environment and the speech sounds that you think that they do? So managing the child audiologically is always the first place to start, to make sure that all this good talking that you're going is something that the child can access because the technology is working. And then you're looking at, sometimes you just have to change it up. So maybe you're somebody who maybe is comfortable playing with books and talking about books, and your kiddo is really not, there's a language delay and they're not really loving your books. So sometimes you have to change up how you present it and where you present it to kind of sneak it in there, like the mothers who, puree spinach to put in their brownies so their kids get their vegetables. Sometimes you just have to change it up so that it can be palatable and that it works with the child. Sometimes there are more services that are needed. So you take a look at what you're doing audiologically. Is there a teacher of the deaf involved? Is there a speech therapist involved? Are we looking at there being more, increasing the level of intensity of services like that? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment. I just want to thank the REIC, Karen, Susan, all you guys for putting this together, and Nancy, because when I saw the topic, I was really intrigued, but you far exceeded my expectations. What you said, the way you said it, the strategies that you gave, they're incredibly tangible. And I find that sometimes, 'cause I'm a program manager for one of the agencies, and I go to a lot of trainings just to be able to support my team. And I find that sometimes there are trainings or just, these type of learning opportunities that don't necessarily give specific strategies for practitioners in supporting families and going into their homes and doing such. So I thank you so much, Nancy, for all the things that you said, because I think that independent of hearing loss, I think that these are great tools for anyone that's working with children and families. So again, thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Sometimes the stars are aligned because I can be pretty dry on some days too, but this happens to be topics that I really like, and I'm increasingly more aware of the things that we know to deal with hearing loss really have to find a place with how we can support families in their relationships, because when we're rowing the boat in the same direction and we are really looking out for each other and our emotional well-being, it benefits the child. And there are things to do. And keeping in mind how you feel about it as you're going through, I think really helps practitioners and families, and then the children.
Thank you for your input.
So I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. So if somebody has a question, they can reach me. And I clearly can't type and talk at the same time. So I'm at Summit Speech School, and that's the easiest way to reach me. And
I
we
will
can,
also be sending all that information,
terrific.
emails. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. If nobody else has any questions,
Okay.
we will be ending the presentation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you everyone for coming and listening to Nancy.
Thank you, Karen, for inviting me, and thank you, Susan. And it was good to see all of you. Thanks.
Okay. Bye,
you.
everyone. Have a blessed evening.